I was unfaithful to my fiancé, left him for someone 15 years younger, and now I'm watching him thrive while my life falls apart. I need to get this off my chest, and I can't do it anywhere else. So here I am, a stranger on the internet, hoping that someone out there can help me make sense of the mess I made of my own life. I'm 33 years old. My ex, who I'll call Jay, is 34. We were together for 10 years. 10 years. We met when I was just 20 years old and he was 21, which means we didn't just date. We grew up together. We built our entire adult lives side by side, living in his family home, raising 2 dogs that honestly felt like our children, and at one point, we had a wedding date set for April of 2023. From the outside, Jay looked like the total package. He was smart. He was passionate about restoring classic cars. He was loyal to a fault and completely dependable in a way that most people never get to experience. When I lost my driver's license, he helped me get it back. When I lost everything financially, he helped me rebuild from nothing. When my own father once tried to take money I had worked hard to save, Jay refused to hand it over, even when I begged him to. He fixed things. He planned things. He kept my life from completely falling apart more times than I can count. But somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like his partner. I started feeling like his project. Everything revolved around his schedule, his plans, his cars. If we traveled, he planned every detail down to the last hour. If something broke, he handled it before I even had a chance to try. And whenever I tried to express how I was feeling, it would turn into a long, exhausting conversation about how I wasn't communicating correctly, or how I was being too emotional. I felt like I had no power over my own life. He was a planner. I wanted spontaneity, and that quiet gap between us grew for years without either of us fully saying it out loud. Now I have to be honest, because that is the entire point of this. I was not a perfect partner, not even close. Back in 2016, I reconnected with an ex behind Jay's back. We met in secret and things crossed a line they never should have crossed. Jay found out because my own brother told him, and he also found photos on my phone. It completely exploded. He showed up at my workplace. There was a scene. The police were called. I was humiliated. I was scared. And ultimately, I got down on my knees and begged him to take me back. I promised him it would never happen again. And he stayed. He chose to stay. But I know now that it broke something in his trust that never fully healed. And even outside of that, I had a habit I am not proud of. Whenever Jay and I were going through a rough patch, I would seek out attention from other men, coworkers, guys from the gym, old connections I kept around for far too long. Nothing always physical, but emotional. The kind of validation that I knew deep down was a betrayal, even if I told myself it wasn't. Jay could sense it. He asked us to share locations on our phones. When he found traces of those conversations, he called it exactly what it was. Emotional betrayal. Triangulation. A pattern. I told myself I was just talking. Just venting. Just being friendly. Looking back now, I can see exactly how it must have felt to him. Like there was always someone waiting in the background. Like he could never fully trust the person sleeping next to him. In 2021, after years of tension and quiet distance between us, Jay took me on a trip up the California coast. He proposed to me over the cliffs at Point Lobos. It was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. He got down on one knee and told me he saw a future with me, that he wanted children, that he wanted a family. He gave me a stunning ring, and even though we didn't have our own home yet, he chose me, again, and I loved that ring. I loved showing it off. I loved the way strangers would notice it and smile and ask about it. For our 10-year anniversary in 2022, we went to Cancun. It was supposed to be our big reset, our fresh start, the beginning of everything we had been building toward. But on the last night of that trip, I got very drunk at the resort bar after spending a long evening with one of the bartenders. When Jay finally brought me back to our room, everything unraveled. We got into a terrible argument. I completely lost control of myself. I was screaming. I was out of my mind with something I still don't fully understand. And at one point, I struck Jay in the face. He reached out to my friends by video call, trying to get me to calm down. He filmed parts of what happened that night. And when he showed me the footage later, I barely recognized the person on that screen. Watching that video was one of the most disturbing moments of my entire life. That was me. That was what I had become. After that night, Jay told me he couldn't go through with the wedding. He canceled it. And instead of feeling like we were going to work through it together, I felt like he had made a final verdict, that I was broken, unstable, and beyond repair. Around that same time, one of my closest friends, who I'll call E, had just left her husband. And she kept telling me she had never been happier. She kept painting this picture of freedom and passion and starting over. She told me that life was too short to stay somewhere you weren't completely in love. That being taken care of wasn't the same as being truly fulfilled. That Jay was holding me back. I desperately wanted to believe that story applied to me too. So I stopped wanting to go home after work. I started staying later and later at the gym. When Jay started asking questions, I turned it around on him. I started arguments about him being controlling. I stopped sharing my location. I took off the engagement ring and told him it was uncomfortable. I told myself that was the truth. And that is when I met C. C was 18 at the time. I know exactly how that sounds. He was confident, playful, and full of energy. He gave me the kind of attention that made me feel like a completely different person. Young, seen, wanted in a way I had convinced myself I was missing. We would text constantly. We would hang out at the gym until 2 in the morning. We would go to the beach, go for drives, stay out in a world that felt wide open and free. All the things I had told myself I was missing. It started as emotional unfaithfulness. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself it wasn't real. It wasn't harmless. And it became very real. When things eventually crossed a physical line, Jay started noticing the signs. He's sharp. He always has been. My social media looked different. Old photos of us had been quietly deleted, replaced with posts that made my life look free and adventurous. My engagement ring had been sitting in the medicine cabinet for weeks, gathering dust. He put the pieces together and confronted me directly. That was August of 2023. I denied everything, and then he took my phone. He locked himself in the bathroom and went through everything. Deleted messages, photos, every thread and every timestamp. Then he called C directly from my phone and asked him point blank if we had been unfaithful behind his back. C confirmed it. Jay came out of that bathroom a different person. He looked at me and said I had done the exact same thing I did in 2016, and that I had never actually changed. He said I had destroyed the trust between us permanently. He said he was going to tell everyone, my family, my coworkers, everyone who knew us, and he meant every word. I panicked. I lashed out. I told him the love had faded years ago, and that I had just been waiting for him to change. I don't even know if that was true, or if I just needed something to say that would make what I had done feel justified. I moved out that same day and went straight to C's family's house. The next morning I found a room to rent and changed my phone number entirely, and Jay followed through on every single promise he made. He called my relatives. He called my coworkers. He even reached out to family I had living in another country. I felt like my entire story had been told by someone else, and the only version people heard made me the villain. So I held on to C harder, because at that point, I felt like I had burned every other bridge behind me. Months later, in March of 2024, Jay reached out one final time. He said he wanted the full truth about all of the other men, all of the times I had been unfaithful throughout our relationship beyond what he already knew about. He said he knew there was more. He was right. There had been a handful of occasions I had never told him about. One of them involving someone from his own circle of friends. I admitted I had been a terrible partner, but I still didn't give him the full truth he was asking for, and he told me he didn't believe me anyway. He said he never wanted to speak to me again. He blocked me on everything. He kept the dogs, and even though I knew I had no right to fight that, it broke something in me that I haven't been able to put back together. That same day, things got even worse in a way I am still ashamed to say out loud. I had told C things about Jay that were not true. I had exaggerated his temper. I had painted him as someone threatening and dangerous. I even told C that Jay had once been violent toward his own mother. I made that up. Out of anger. Out of fear. Out of a desperate need to make the person I had betrayed into a monster, so I could live with what I had done. C, who is a black belt in martial arts, showed up at Jay's house ready for a confrontation. Somehow Jay stayed completely calm. He talked him down, and then he showed C the messages, the photos, and the video from that night in Cancun. C realized I had been lying. He called me furious. I admitted I had been keeping contact with Jay secret. C apologized to Jay and walked away. Then, as C was driving down the street to pick me up where I was waiting nearby, Jay drove past and saw me getting into C's car. The look on his face. I have never forgotten it. I had no contact with Jay after that. Then, earlier this year, my mother saw a post on social media saying that Jay's father had passed away. I had lived in that house for 10 years. His father was basically my family too. I was devastated in a way I didn't feel I had any right to be. I tried calling Jay multiple times. Still blocked. When one of his father's closest friends happened to come into my workplace by coincidence, I mentioned Jay and quietly hoped the message might reach him somehow. And then I made a decision I still don't fully know how to feel about. I went to the house myself, with flowers. When Jay opened the door, he looked at me like I was a complete stranger. He literally said the words, "Can I help you?" The dogs came to the door. The same dogs I had helped raise. The same animals I had loved for years. And when Jay told them to stop, they listened to him. They barely reacted to me at all. Like I was someone they had simply never known. I tried to hand him the flowers. I tried to explain why I was there. His first question was about C showing up at his house. I froze. I couldn't find the words. He took the flowers. He made it quietly, calmly clear that I wasn't welcome. And I left. He has not reached out since. Now it has been over 2 years. And from everything I can see from a distance, Jay's doing well. He's working on his cars. He's traveling. After his father passed, he inherited the house they had shared. He's building a life. He's not in a relationship as far as I can tell, but he looks like someone who has found a kind of peace that I don't know how to describe. Peace I don't have. I'm still with C, but it is nothing like what I imagined when I threw everything away. We argue. He's young and still figuring out what responsibility even looks like. I find myself missing the stability I had with Jay, even while I also remember how suffocated I sometimes felt inside of it. I'm still driving the car that Jay found and fixed for me years ago. I can't bring myself to get rid of it. I still see cars on the road that remind me of him. Classic cars. Old engines. Things that shouldn't mean anything. And yet, I'm working 2 jobs now. I'm paying off debt I racked up in secret while we were still together. And I'm stuck somewhere between feeling like the worst version of a person and telling myself that I was just unhappy and did what I had to do to survive emotionally. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. and I think I have been avoiding it for a very long time. I couldn't post this anywhere else. I've spent so long telling a version of this story where I was the one who was misunderstood, the one who was suffocated, the one who was left with no other choice. I've lost friends over what happened. I even had to leave one of my jobs because the teasing from coworkers became too heavy to carry every single day. So I'm telling the real version here, to strangers, because maybe that is the only place left where it is finally safe to be honest. I don't know what I'm looking for by sharing this. Maybe just to say it out loud for once without softening the edges. Maybe just to admit that the person who got hurt the most in all of this was someone who loved me for 10 years and never deserved any of it. And maybe that is something I'll have to carry for the rest of my life.